Good morning, students. Welcome to SRBPS Virtual Classrooms. I am Archana Jha, your English educator to teach you English. Humanitarianism and respect for human lives, irrespective of class, creed, or gender, should be above all hatred. With this thought, let's start our new lesson, The Enemy. The Enemy is the chapter in Vistas, written by Pearl S. Buck. Pearl S. Buck, known as Pearl Syndestrical Buck, was an American writer and novelist. She was born on 26th June 1892, Hillsborough, West Virginia in United States. She died on 6th March 1973 in Denby, Vermont in United States. She wrote many novels, and some of her novels like The Good Earth, Pavilion of Women, Dragon Seed became a content for many movies. She won Pulitzer Prize for Fiction, Nobel Prize in Literature. Introduction of this chapter. The story highlights how a Japanese doctor saves the life of an American prisoner of war and rises above narrow national prejudices. He risks his honor, career, position, and life by sheltering a war prisoner of the enemy camp and saving his life. The author has very beautifully portrayed the conflict in the doctor's mind as a private individual and as a citizen with a sense of national loyalty. The setting of this story, that means the background of the story, is the story takes place on a coastal town of Japan in the year 1941 when Japan attacked Pearl Harbor, a war going on between America and Japan. Japanese were hostile to the Americans and ready to kill any American found in their soil. The characters of this story: Dr. Sadao's father, Dr. Sadao, a Japanese doctor; Hana, Dr. Sadao's wife; Yumi, a maid in Dr. Sadao's house; General of the Japan; and Tom, prisoner of war. This story, as told before, is set in Japan and its coastal area. Sadao, the main character, the protagonist of this story, had spent his childhood like an ordinary kid climbing trees and playing barefoot amongst the sea. His father had been a great inspirational force in his life. He had been wholly devoted to Sadao's education and had sent him to America at 22 to learn surgery and medicine. Sadao returned to Japan at the age of 30 and became famous as a scientist. Sadao married Hana, whom he met in America, and before he chose her to be his wife, he confirmed that she was of pure Japanese race. After Hana met Sadao's father and got the permission, they got married in old Japanese way. This was the time of the Second World War when Japan and America were fighting on opposite sides. The doctor and Hana were standing on the balcony of their house on the beach when they saw a black figure rising out of the water, and when they went close, they found that it fall with his face down into the sand. They rushed towards that man. They had taken him to be a fisherman because many fishermen villages were there in the nearby coastal area. When they reached there, they both found that the man was a young American sailor. Dr. Sadao realized that the man was bleeding from an old gunshot on the right side of his lower back, where the flesh had blackened and the rocks had also reopened the wound. They took him to their home, while at the same time they were both troubled by the question of whether the American prisoner should be saved or not. Dr. Sadao and Hana were patriotic to the core and duly considered Americans to be their enemy. But the human side in them didn't allow them to toss back a wounded man into the wild rocky ocean. So they decided to go ahead and treat that prisoner of war. Hannah asked the maid Yumi to fetch hot water and clean the man who was now in Sadau's father's room. Yumi stubbornly refused to wash a white man. Hannah's pride didn't permit her from forcing the maid, so she washed him herself. Not only Yumi, the other servants were also surprised and frightened at what Sadao had just told them. They didn't want that their master should operate an enemy. The gardener, being a superstitious man, warned them that they should not try to help the enemy. But Sadao had decided. Sadao came in wearing his surgeon's coat and brought his surgeon's bag and was ready to operate. He asked Hannah to fetch some towels and told her that she would have to apply the anesthetic if it was required. When Sadao began, Hannah turned pale and ran out to retch. Sadao didn't like to see his wife in distress, but when she returned, he taught her how to saturate the cotton and hold it near the patient's nostrils, and thus continued the operation. Hannah noticed that young man was extremely thin and looked as if he had gone through much suffering. Hannah had heard rumors of how General Takima beat his wife. She also noticed deep red scars on the American's neck, just under his ear. So they were sure that even this prisoner was also tortured a lot. On the seventh day, two things happened. When Dr. Sadao and Hannah got up, they found that their servants were ready to leave them. Hannah paid them before they left. And secondly, in the afternoon, a messenger arrived saying that General had asked for Dr. Sadao. Hannah was frightened as she thought the servants had reported the matter and they would be arrested. But after asking the messenger, they were told that the general was in pain and needed Sadao to attend to him. Dr. Sadao went to see the general and told him about the prisoner he was sheltering in his home. The general didn't want to get Sadao arrested or get harmed in any way. So, General promised him to send his own private assassins to get rid of the prisoner. Dr. Sadao felt relieved and agreed. But the general, because of his suffering, forgot about the promise he had made. Dr. Sadao spent 3 sleepless nights waiting for the assassins who never came. Then he decided to take the matter in his own hands and help the prisoner to escape. He knew about the nearby islands which were uninhabited as it submerges during the storm season. So, he prepared a boat and put food, water, quilts which he had got from the pawn shop into the boat. He gave Tom, the American, his own flashlight, some Japanese clothes to wear and a black cloth to tie around his blonde head so that it could not be seen. He also cautioned him against signaling in the dark as it could be easily seen. After the prisoner left, the servants returned. When Sadao was called to attend to General again, he told him that the prisoner had escaped. This way, Dr. Sadao got rid of his enemy in a friendly way. However, Sadao was truly rewarded when there was no prick of light from the island that evening and he was able to finally relax. It meant that American had been able to escape, and thus the story shows how humanity triumphs over hatred and narrow national prejudices. Now let's learn the message from this story. The enemy gives the message that humanism transcends all man-made prejudices. and barriers. Dr. Sadao upholds the ethics of medical profession in treating an enemy. The story is a great lesson of peace, love, sympathy, fellow feeling, and humanism. Character sketch of the story. Dr. Sadao proves to be an obedient child. He is loving and caring husband. He is a dutiful doctor and scientist. Is loyal, patriotic, and kind-hearted. Hannah proves himself to be devoted and committed wife. She is determined and is a skilled homemaker. General Takima proves himself to be a powerful but corrupt general, is cruel too. He has unusual sense of humor. He is selfish and self-absorbed. This way, we have learned theme of this story, summary of this story, and message of this story with character sketch. Hope you have understood. Thank you. Have a nice time. Bye bye.